If this were a dictatorship, it'd be a heck of a lot easier. Just so long as I'm the dictator.
I've got a pen and I've got a phone. And I can use that pen to sign executive orders.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
And when they say, I want my lawyer, you tell them, shut up.
My change in party will enable me to be re-elected.
I actually did vote for the $87 billion before I voted against it. Mr. Reagan will raise taxes, and so will I.
It is the constitutional position. It is the advice of the founders to follow a non-interventionist foreign policy. Stay out of entangling alliances.
This is a dangerous man, citizen. Avert your eyes. Don't you dare listen to this man. Avert your eyes, citizen. He's extreme. He's dangerous. He's crazy. He's not respectable.
Welcome to Liberty or Death Radio, Episode 12, featuring interviews with Libertarian candidates Carl Loser, candidate for the 10th Senatorial District in Virginia, and Brian Suojanen, running for Virginia House of Delegates, District 87. Liberty or Death Radio is sounding the alarm of freedom to an awakening citizenry and setting brush fires in the minds of men. You can find us online at DanielRayRichardson.com, at Facebook.com/Liberty or Death Radio, Twitter.com/Daniel Ray Rich, or at Daniel Ray Rich, RICH, at Twitter.com. Email the show with your thoughts and questions at libertyorddeathradio@gmail.com. That's libertyorddeathradio@gmail.com. This is the second episode where we meet candidates running for public office in 2015. I trust that you benefit from our discussions of subjects vital to liberty today. Okay, Carl Loser's on the line from Virginia Senate District 10, running for senator there in that district. Welcome to the show, Carl.
Hey, thank you for having me, Dan.
Okay, and the audience, of course, can find you online at Loser for Liberty. That's loser4liberty.com, and we'll be posting your links to the show notes page. Okay, Carl, just to jump right into it. On your website, you'd mentioned it's time to extinguish double taxation. That's your quote. And what exactly did you mean by double taxation, please?
Double taxation is actually something that's quite common in the United States as well as Virginia. And, you know, right now when you go, for instance, when you go to buy a car, you're paying taxes for the sales tax. You're paying for the registration fee. You're paying for your license. You're paying for every mile you travel through gas mileage. So you're paying taxes on gas. And the thing is, you're getting taxed every aspect of it. And I think that we really need to look at tax reform in Virginia.
That's very good. I did just hear of a bill in New Jersey, and I don't know how it's advanced, but apparently some of the Republicans had gone with the idea of eliminating yearly registration fees for vehicles. They said, look, you buy your car, you pay the initial registration fee, you should be once and done. There's no need for a year-by-year registration fee. So I applaud you. I think it's something we definitely, as inflation is taking more and more effect upon American families, we've got to see government trimming the belt, trimming the fat off, and slimming down here and doing more with less, in a sense, or doing less with less revenue, I guess really would be the best thing. And as you say, I think that's great to eliminate that taxation upon taxation, and it's just families that are suffering who are trying to raise their kids. I mean, it's just the cost of living is extravagant anymore, just to subsist.
Well, I agree with you, actually. I actually have found other ways that, I would like to get government out of business in general. I mean,
sure.
In Virginia, I don't know if you have this in Pennsylvania or other across everywhere in the U.S., but Virginia, and actually I know it's not everywhere in the U.S., but in Virginia, we have something called the ABC board,
Okay.
which is alcohol beverage control.
Yes. That's the people that were chasing the girl and assaulting the girl that had the water bottle, right?
Yes, everybody knows that in Virginia. That's probably one of our downfalls of the system, which actually, well, there's quite a few.
Yes.
There was actually a more recent one, too, with, a black gentleman who, had the same problems. So that's something I really would like to end, because right now, in Virginia, sales on liquor is completely owned by the state. And then not even that, they also double tax you there. So they make a profit off of the liquor sales, and then they charge you sales tax as well.
Okay. So do you have to buy at the ABC store, or is it just right?
Yes, you have to buy at their store. That's the only place you can buy liquor. So there's no competition.
Right.
And so they're getting they mark their prices or whatever they choose.
Yes.
They get their profit, and then they even get the sales tax.
Yes, and we should be hearing lots of liberal outrage at this, because usually they talk about Walmart pays so little and so forth, and this is just another example of the lower middle class. I don't like those terms, but people that earn less being taken advantage of. If they want to enjoy wine or spirits or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are perhaps some other ways that you would like to reduce government intrusion into our lives? Because I think people have this idea that if we start to cut government services, that's automatically a bad thing. But let's discuss what could we do that would be cutting to actually improve liberty at the same time we're saving money.
Oh man, well, this is a very good question. I actually have a couple things.
Excellent.
If you would like me to elaborate,
Sure, please do.
There's one thing I've really been considering, and it's definitely something that needs to be fixed. There's something called the Certificate of Public Need by the Virginia Department of Health.
Okay.
And it's actually, I think it's present in 36 states out of 50. So if you want to add more operating tables to your hospital, or new technology for surgery, or additions, you have to get permission from the government to expand your business. And they also allow for your competitors to appeal your petition.
Wow! Wow!
So
okay.
This is pure cronyism
Yes.
at its finest, and that's and then also besides that, we have people who can't even afford healthcare as it is, and yet this cronyism drives up the cost of healthcare, because if there's less competition, then we have to pay higher prices because there's less of a supply. So these families who can't afford to put food on their tables are now having to pay more money for when their child gets sick, and they can't even afford to have a roof over their head.
Absolutely, and as Peter Schiff will talk to some of the Occupy Wall Street crowd, they're directing their anger at the recipients of the funds. They need to be directing their anger at those that are handing out the funds. And that's exactly what you're wanting to do. You're running for office not to abolish business or say business you've got to give so much money away more in taxes than you already are. But hey, we're going to cut off the government's supply here, where they can't just hand out this money and favor one business above another, or, as you say, manipulate the market in those ways. That's excellent. Do you have any other examples?
I would like to, there's something called the Land Use Deferment Program. And I think I might have touched base on this, in other areas of my campaign. But what I realize is the land use. There's a land use deferment program, and this program, what it does is defers your taxes for up to 5 years if you meet certain requirements that your land is on. So these people have to apply every year. And basically what it does is, for instance, my county, and I have a small little county in Virginia, 30 miles west of Richmond. It's actually in my district, it's Powhatan. And they have about 8% of people who are on this program. Meanwhile, 92% are not on this program in this county.
Okay.
And 92% are paying the burden for the taxpayers who choose to defer their taxes now, which is the 8%. So those 8%, and I've actually seen the names, most of those people are the wealthy individuals. So why are they getting tax deferment?
That's exactly how it works out, because the wealthy, of course, are looking long-term planning, and of course the average Joe, he's not thinking of the long term. He's thinking about how he's just going to survive, and that's usually how it works out when you have those type of welfare programs that maybe are not directly handing out checks on the spot, but as you say, it's kind of a long-range plan where you can defer. Now, what exactly does it mean defer? I guess it means they have to pay at a certain time in the future. Is that right?
So what it actually means is they have to pay back up to 5 years back. Okay, so let's say you defer. They assess your property value, and they're deferring about. They usually defer about half of your taxes. So
okay.
let's say you defer. You have $5,000. They defer $2,500. Now
Okay.
that $2,500, you can hold on to it for 5 years. You got to pay that amount back unless you surpass the 5 years. You only pay retroactive for 5 years back. If you're on the program for 6 years, you only pay 5 years back. Also, what I found out these rich folks are doing is they are putting that $2,500 and putting it into a stock.
Yes.
Making money on that stock.
Right.
And then giving the $2,500 back, and they keep the profit. So how does this help the poor? How does this help the people who are working hard to make it day to day? I mean,
absolutely.
And that's the problem.
And that's, I guess, what you're trying to run on is trying to show people that these government programs that supposedly help the poor are in fact, enslaving them by taking away their liberties as well as making them less well off financially. So
exactly.
It's very good. And let's delve into the income tax. I said you want to abolish the income tax, I believe, and have only a sales or consumption tax. And is that correct? Okay.
Ideally, I think that would be the best thing. Although I do think it's more of a federal level idea. You could do it statewide, but most of our taxes are actually property taxes in Virginia that goes to the county. Besides, you have the lottery, which is corrupt in itself. That's something I want to abolish. But
okay,
besides that, it's just you basically have this income tax system that is, like I said, needs to be changed. It needs to be changed. I think right now the biggest thing about income is the federal level more than the state.
Absolutely.
Virginia,
Absolutely. And it'd be nice to see the state interpose for the citizens so they wouldn't have to pay that. Now, just getting back quickly to the deferment, I'm supposing these are the county and school district taxes that would have to be paid, the property taxes, and so the state would regulate that, you're saying? Is that kind of your idea?
So what it is the Dillon rule. Actually, it's only called the Dillon's rule.
Okay.
The Dillon's rule has to give the local counties express authority, which means the state legislator gives the local counties express authority.
Okay.
Meaning they can't go past their authority that they're given.
So you want to abolish the income tax, have only a sales or consumption tax, and what is your current sales tax percentage, Carl?
In Virginia, I believe it's 5.5.
Okay, 5.5%. And would you expand the base of tax goods and services and or raise the sales tax rate?
I would not increase sales tax at all. I think from a market standpoint, the taxes will fix itself, because if people have more money to spend, people are going to buy more product.
Sure.
Or more food to put on their table.
Absolutely. Sure.
So,
okay.
It's going to fix itself.
Okay, so you don't favor raising the rate, and you don't favor expanding the base of sales tax revenue to replace the income tax abolition then?
No, I don't.
Okay, excellent. All right, great. And then also you want to abolish the minimum wage. Carl, are you crazy? Won't this hurt the poor? They need a wage to enable them to live, man. What's going on? You've been out in the sun too long.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I think the minimum wage is definitely an issue for some people. I think from an economic standpoint, we really got to look at the main issue, and the main issue is standing up for the individual. The individual should be able to work for whatever amount they choose to.
Sure.
So if you wanted to work for $1, go for it. I'm certainly not going to work for $1. So you find a business that's going to pay $1 an hour. They're not going to find anybody because everybody's going to think they're crazy.
Exactly.
So the market itself is going to say, well, the market itself is going to fix itself.
Sure.
It's going to make it so that people are going to reject bad deals, bad contracts, and only accept ones that favor their interest. That's what a true contract's about. A contract is both sides technically should win or benefit from their contract.
Absolutely, and I think it's incumbent on people to realize too that they're not guaranteed a job. There's no right to a job, and also that they, in a market-driven economy like you're talking about, they would invest their time and their money in education and in apprenticeships and so forth. Some type of education that's either in college again or an apprenticeship that's going to enable them to actually be more valuable in the marketplace. They're not going to study things that aren't going to prepare them for life and for earning money. So, if they want to be, an engineer and make engineers money, or they want to be, the vice president of a corporation, they're not going to go out and study art or philosophy or something like that, which is happening quite a lot. But, Carl, really, when it comes down to it, aren't employers just greedy? I mean, shouldn't we set the minimum wage at $25 per hour or $50 per hour? I mean, that would enable people to live, right?
The problem is, I think everybody has to look out for their own self-interest. You know what? Everybody, the businessmen, I think they look out for more of their self-interest than the people. The people rely on the government to promote a safety net.
Yes.
When we don't need that because people can look out for their own self-interest.
Absolutely.
And if you raise, from an economic standpoint, we raise this minimum wage to $25 an hour, then milk will only raise to $30.
It is
$30 a gallon.
It is incredible. Yes.
And I'm not working for $30 per gallon of milk,
Absolutely. I don't think people realize the trickle-down effect, so to speak, of how that would work out. And, of course, when we pay a higher wage, the employer has to charge a higher price for his products or his services, and that just, follows throughout the economy. Even if they're an upper-level producer of machinery, for example, then that's going to trickle down to the people below them. If they're a retailer, the public are going to face that right away. Carl, we're going to have to wrap it up, but are any closing thoughts that you have? And again, people can find you at Loser for Liberty, loser4liberty.com, and we're going to post that on the show notes page for today. Any closing thoughts, Carl?
Me and my campaign manager collectively came up with a music video to help reach non-voters that typically would not vote because they're not interested in politics. So
great.
We made a hip-hop song that hopefully will reach out to a different class of voters.
Awesome, Carl. That's great.
So
that's great.
I just wanted to mention that. Thank you, and thank you once again, Dan, for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, it's our pleasure. We're glad to promote libertarian candidates around the country, even other candidates, from parties that would be promoting liberty. As long as they'll promote liberty, we're happy to interview them and give them a chance to broadcast our message. And we would invite people who perhaps aren't in your senatorial district to send in funds to support you or donate their time if they're in the general area. And again, you're running for Virginia Senate District 10. We thank you again for coming to Liberty or Death Radio, Carl.
Thank you very much, Dan.
You're listening to Liberty or Death Radio. You can find us online at danielrayrichardson.com. Coming up next, Brian Suojanen, running for Virginia House of Delegates. All right, we have Brian Suojanen on the phone. He's running for Virginia House of Delegates, District 87. Welcome, Brian, to Liberty or Death Radio.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, Daniel.
The pleasure's all mine. So, what county or counties does your district consist of, and what are some cities that maybe be prominent in your district people might associate with Virginia?
So we span a couple of counties, Loudoun County and Prince William County, both are in Northern Virginia. And in terms of cities, we're looking at a small part of Sterling, Virginia, Ashburn, South Riding, Stone Ridge.
Okay.
Those are the major. That's sort of the heart of the district.
Okay, very good. It's just my thought that people that maybe are not in your immediate area would be interested in knowing kind of more where you are. And so it's our hope, obviously, we can engender interest around the country about your campaign and about some of your fellow Virginians there. What city do you personally live in, if I may ask?
So I live in Ashburn, but the subdivision is referred to as Brambleton.
Okay. And what is your educational background that you would bring into the equation here as you run for delegate in Virginia?
Well, actually, my undergraduate degree is in fine arts. Pursued a bachelor's of fine arts degree in Boston, Massachusetts, and then not long after that, I sort of fell in love with the software that I was using to do print design. Specifically Photoshop, which is a popular title from Adobe, and I became fascinated with software development, and so I did postgraduate work in computer science at Boston University, my career sort of flourished not long after I moved to Washington, D.C. in 2000, and I've been in IT since then. And over the last 13 years, I've actually concentrated in education technology. So that's actually a big component of my platform is bringing education and a libertarian platform and education at the same time. So that's I think I'm kind of unique in that sense. So
I think so. Yeah. Okay. Now, maybe you can give us a little more explanation of how that all fits in with your thoughts there about running for office and this educational information technology background.
As I look ahead, economically speaking, by 2030, I think, we're going to have a lot of elderly folks that we're going to be having to take care of nationwide. There'll be slight nuances state to state, of course, but, the point I'm trying to make here is that, we're going to have to get pretty smart about education because what I see coming, in the next 15 years is this sort of dichotomy, between, hey, do we spend money on taking care of, the older generations in our country, or do we spend money on educating the young children? And I think, healthcare is always a challenge to reduce costs. We've struggled with that.
Sure.
But I think education, particularly with technology, we can actually make great strides in reducing the cost of education, particularly K-12 education. We're already seeing that happen at the college level. And higher education, of course, there's tons of online programs.
Yes.
People can earn degrees online. And so I want to take that and move that and apply that to K through 12.
That's excellent. I appreciate it. Obviously, my goal, personally, I won't speak for you, but my goal as a libertarian is to see more privatization in the educational field. But ultimately, we realize we're probably still going to have state schools. So any attempts to make that cheaper and more accessible and even better, in a lot of ways. I think of the Ron Paul homeschooling curriculum that's available online. It's wonderful to hear that you're promoting market-based solutions in the public educational sector also.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think where we can start is by having online charter schools that may come from originally from public funds, but once people start to understand, start to shift education into the private sector. We need to start making those strides now and making those efforts now.
Absolutely, and you did mention on your website tax credits for those who want to homeschool or use private education. I think that's an
Absolutely,
yeah. That's very good. So it's not like a voucher in the sense that the state's taking the money and then returning it, but it's in the sense, I guess, the credit where they're not actually paying it in the first place. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that's excellent. Yeah. The idea of keeping it out of the government's hands in the first place is much better than actually returning it later. Brian, what steps led you to libertarianism? This is obviously not everybody in the world is libertarian, and so
I relocated to Washington, D.C. from Boston in 2000, and the job market was quite different down here from in Boston. I found there were a lot of federal jobs and a lot of and I was a software engineer. And so I ended up working on a Department of Navy contract, helping them out. And I met a gentleman named Nick Sarwark, who happens to be the chair of the National Libertarian Party right now. And he and I became friends pretty quickly. And really, it was just through that friendship he got me engaged in the Libertarian Party locally.
Okay.
At the time I was living in Arlington, and so from there, I've been active somewhat, as a support role, a volunteer, but, background type person.
Okay. Now, this is your first run for office then, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, and I think that's a plus because I'm just delighted to see new, fresh faces getting into the field. I think that's awesome. How do people react to you as a third-party candidate? Do you find it, they say, hey, that's wonderful to see something new, or they're like, oh, we're not sure about these libertarians?
I have to say, so far it's been very positive.
Good.
I think the last time you and I spoke, I was talking about, I was out collecting signatures just so I could get on the ballot.
Yes, okay.
And that was due early June. And, I actually had a lot of fun doing it. It was a lot of work, but I had a lot of fun, and the reception was positive.
Okay.
And since then, at least here in Northern Virginia, I've been invited to participate in all of the surveys that the candidates participate in for the political action committees, so on and so forth. So, the reception is warm so far.
That's very good. And how difficult was it to get those signatures? I think you need 120, is that correct?
Yeah, it was 125. It was deceiving. I thought, gosh, this will be a piece of cake, maybe a weekend or two and I'll be done. But, it's a challenge with the way that they draw the district lines. I would go to a farmer's market and 50% of the signatures are valid. It was just so hard to find people in your district. So I ultimately ended up, really just going door to door, which is the way to do it. For anybody listening and curious about what it takes, you just have to understand where the boundaries are for your district and just go door to door and just be persistent about it. So it ended up taking me about a month.
Absolutely. That persistence is the key. And also being wise. I think one thing we could mention also would be collecting signatures on primary day. If you know of a popular poll location that's going to be a lot of people there, and you can get to that poll location and just hang out, obviously maintain your distance from the polls. What are some goals for your campaign, and what are some milestones that you've achieved so far? Obviously getting your signatures you've achieved so far already, and obviously you hope to win. But other than that, what would be some goals for your campaign and maybe something else you've achieved?
I wanted to actually get a fundraiser to join the campaign, and I've met that goal. And just recently I had an events coordinator join the team. So, I have somebody focused on outreach. I have somebody focused on fundraising for me. I have a campaign manager.
Wow.
It's feeling quite serious. And, other than that, I think I'm influencing the positions and the issues for the Republican and the Democrat candidate. In fact, I'm bumping into them at certain events, and they, it's kind of interesting because they both seem very, appreciative. But when I look at how their websites are evolving, a lot of their issues are almost reactive to the issues that I published. I was sort of the first one nominated, and I had my website out there first. And just to see how their content is coming together, I feel like I'm making I'm at least influencing their positions on the local issues.
Brian, I think it's great that you're expanding the boundaries of the debate here. You're busting right through that, and that's just excellent. We need that so desperately these days because, people, if they're not exposed to new ideas and new thoughts, how are you going to blame them for supporting the same old? So.
Exactly.
That's so refreshing to hear. What are some problems that your state is facing, and how do you propose to deal with those? What would you like to see happen if you were elected?
Well, there are a couple of local issues that I'll touch on briefly. One of them is congestion. This area in Northern Virginia has grown tremendously over the last decade, and the infrastructure just isn't there. And so on my website, I talk about ways that we could address that. And alternatives to just going out and creating more roads, of course. So I'm trying to propose libertarian solutions there. Either, implementing telework policies, encouraging businesses to implement telework policies, employees to adopt them, looking at ways to further encourage carpooling, and then also have a way for the private sector to piggyback on existing mass transit options. We actually, here in Loudoun County, we have, a bus system, and it's used exclusively by the county, but a lot of people complain about the schedule. And so I'm thinking, gosh, wouldn't it be cool if we could have somebody step in here from the private market, from the free market, and offer, a mass transit option for times that are convenient for people.
Right.
So that's one idea, or one issue. The other one is, is schools, because the community is growing so fast, and there were some assumptions made about, the demographics and whatnot. We found ourselves sort of lacking elementary schools, and of course, there were some more assumptions about people actually just leaving, once their kids got old enough. And, what I see in the crystal ball is that, if we just go ahead and build a bunch of elementary schools now, well, they're going to be vacant, when all of these students move to middle school and to high school. And so what I'm trying to do locally is to make sure that we build, if we do build a school, that it's repurposed, right? That we can turn it into a middle school, or we turn it into a high school, that we can turn it into a community center someday if we need to. But, trying to provide alternative ideas to the local community in thinking through how to solve this problem. But, again, the funding just isn't there. There are issues about, a lot of folks in Northern Virginia are sending a lot of their paycheck to Richmond every year.
Yes.
And they're just not seeing the return on investment. And so that's something that I need to address in general. But at the state level, I think what Virginia really needs to do, and I think our current governor is actually trying to address this a little bit. I'd probably take a different approach, but we need to diversify our economy here. We rely way too much on the federal government and the Department of Defense for jobs, and so and things have kind of become stagnant in Virginia. It hasn't turned bad yet, but it could. There's the potential for it to go south in the future, particularly as the federal government struggles. So what I want to do is look at ways to grow the local economy, to encourage small businesses to start up and grow here in Virginia, and also be looking at ways to attract large employers to the area, so that because they bring economic stability, right? So if you have lots of startups, many of them fail, so you need some place for these folks to go and work that's stable for a little while until the next startup comes along. You know what I'm saying? And
yes.
So there's a balance that you need to strike. And so, I'm looking at creative ways to grow the economy here. And really that's about, reducing taxes, regulations, and licensing fees for small business, and, looking at tax incentives for larger employers as well, looking at lowering the corporate income tax rate, because that will, attract them to the state in the first place, but also it'll allow them to lower the cost of their products, which means, demand will go up. That will create jobs, so on and so forth. So those are the things that I would be focused on.
That's excellent, and just want to commend you on your excellent website, brianfordistrict87.com, brianfordistrict87.com. You get an excellent website there. It's well laid out and puts your positions right out there for the public to see. I'm hoping that people will understand where you're coming from, that it's not just libertarian idealism, not just the idea, well, this is what we believe, so we have to implement it, but it's with the intention of bettering both the people in your district and the people of the Commonwealth of Virginia. So commend you on your run, Brian. I'm wishing you all the best on that. And would you have any closing thoughts to share?
I spent this morning actually with the local Muslim community, and I was talking to them about how I'm looking to expand prosperity, expand individual liberty, and expand equality under the law. And so those are the sort of the main three themes for my campaign. As a libertarian, you see a lot. There's a lot that you want to accomplish. There's a lot that you want to influence in your community. And I've laid it all out there for everybody.
And again, your website, brianfordistrict87.com, and we're going to be encouraging folks around the country to both get to learn about your campaign, donate to your campaign financially and with their time if they're able. Thanks, Brian, for coming on the show, and best of luck again to you.
Thank you, Danny. Always a pleasure. I look forward to it again.
You've been listening to Liberty or Death Radio, Episode 12. Thanks to Carl Loser and Brian Suojanen for coming on the show. Thanks to my producer, Joe Rovner, for his hard work on the technical side of the show. We will be interviewing more candidates throughout the summer and on towards the November elections, so keep listening. You can find us online at DanielRayRichardson.com, Facebook.com/Liberty or Death Radio, Twitter.com/DanielRayRich, RICH, or at DanielRayRich on Twitter.com. Email the show with your thoughts and questions or with your ideas for a potential candidate to interview at libertyorddeathradio@gmail.com. Again, that's libertyorddeathradio@gmail.com. Take care.